everyone. Welcome to this webinar for CO2 Connect Platform Showcase. I am your host for today. My name is Henry, and I'm joined by my esteemed guests, Debbie and Shivam, as you can see on your screens, both of whom are my colleagues from CO2 Connect and are holding concurrent appointments in their respective organizations. I'd like to start off today's session by doing a quick introduction of my fellow colleagues. Now, Debbie is the Business Development Director of Ascent Solutions, which is a global industrial IoT company specializing in state-of-the-art IoT solutions like GPS and Bluetooth devices. It has been a real privilege getting to work with Debbie over the past few months. Now, her contributions and leadership have been instrumental in driving forward all of our commercial discussions and engagements with our industry partners. Uh, so, Debbie, thank you for taking the time to join us today. It's a pleasure to have you here. Would you like to take a few moments to say hi to our audience?
Henry, thank you so much for the warm welcome. And I just want to say it has been an absolute pleasure working with yourself and the other colleagues on this exciting project. And sustainability is definitely very close to everyone in this team's hearts. And I really look forward to sharing more on how we leverage IoT data for the automation of the carbon computation through CO2 Connect. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Now, turning over to Shivam now. Shivam is a thermodynamics engineer at Evercomm, which is an award-winning company specializing in carbon abatement, tracking, and processing solutions using AI technology. And I think from his title and designation, one can easily guess that he is an intellectual. And that is the truth. Now, in all our technical discussions, I'm always in awe of his expertise in the area of sustainability and the level of rigor and precision he brings to the table. So, Shivam, thank you for your time in joining us today. It's great to have you here with us as well. Could you please take some moments to say hello to everyone?
Thanks a lot, Henry, for having me here to share more about CO2 Connect's brand new carbon abatement computation engine. It is truly my pleasure to work with an extremely talented team that has a common end goal to help enterprises of all sizes to achieve their sustainability goals. That too, realistically, starting from the near future and short term, all the way to walking with them the sustainability journey in the long term.
Thank you, Shiva. All right, so for today's session, we are really excited to be sharing with you our CO2 Connect platform, which combines the best of IoT, data analytics, and blockchain technology to help businesses of all sizes enhance their accessibility to sustainable finance through accurate ESG data reporting. In less than 1 month since our inception in October 2021, we have close to 10 transport and logistics sector corporates, financial institutions such as banks and insurance companies, as well as industry associations that have signed MOUs and POCs with us, committing to their first step in their journey towards net zero. So we are now in pilot phase, and we are gradually expanding the ecosystem to incorporate other industry sectors, and I'll be sharing with you an overview of our platform and the capabilities that we offer shortly. But before that, noting that this is an online session, I just want to go over a couple of administrative items for our audiences today. Firstly, you will notice that on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a chat box and a Q&A feature that allows you to post any questions you might have to our speakers. These questions will be addressed at the end of the session today. Secondly, as we'll be doing a platform showcase, it is recommended for you to maximize your window to full screen during screen sharing to optimize the view. Right, so with that covered, let me now proceed to share my screen to present an overview of the CO2 Connect platform. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Hello? Guys, can you see my screen?
Yes, Henry, we can.
Okay, great. Yep, so let's begin. Okay, so for CO2 Connect, it is a joint venture that is set up by 3 companies, Ascent, Evercomm, and STACS, each contributing their core capabilities towards this venture. Earlier, we have heard about Ascent and Evercomm, which are represented by Debbie and Shivam respectively, and both companies are part of Enterprise SG's prestigious scale-up program, which seeks to internationalize high-growth companies with proven business models. So they are both industry-leading in their own right. Now, the final piece of this venture is STACS, which is where I come from. STACS is a fast-growing blockchain technology company specializing in the development of blockchain-based solutions for sustainable finance. And we have won numerous accolades in the area of green fintech, most notably in last year's MAS's Global FinTech Innovation Challenge Awards. Here at CO2 Connect, our vision is to accelerate the development of data-driven sustainability solutions and to encourage their adoption by making them open and easily accessible to businesses of all sizes. We aspire to be the world's most inclusive sustainability platform, which operates at the intersection of business, technology, and finance to drive sustainable change. The motivation for us coming together really is to address the gap in the industry for corporates to go green, which we recognize as a long-standing pain point that companies face. Currently, corporates have limited means to measure and track their carbon emissions, much less to even embark on the massive undertaking to achieve net zero. Existing carbon emissions tracking and certification processes are highly manual, inefficient, and cost prohibitive, which creates a high barrier to entry, particularly for small and medium enterprises. On the financial institutions end, the lack of trustworthy sustainability data and holistic impact reporting that can be provided by corporates further constrains their ability to channel resources towards supporting these corporates in their transition towards lower carbon emissions. So what we aim to achieve with CO2 Connect is to establish a one-stop technology platform which can help organizations to, firstly, accurately measure and track their emissions baselines and carbon footprints. Secondly, deduce carbon reduction strategies and operational improvements. And thirdly, better mobilize capital towards sustainable and green initiatives. The platform encompasses 3 layers, starting from the data acquisition layer, which then flows to the data analytics layer, and then finally to the underlying blockchain layer. In the data acquisition layer, information about fleet operations, such as fuel consumption, mileage, driver behavior, like speeding, harsh braking, and idling, are captured and tracked using IoT devices that are installed in vehicles. The information is then pushed down to the data analytics layer, where the fleet owner's carbon footprint can be computed against industry standards like the ISO 14000 and the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI in short. From there, an emissions baseline can be established and areas for optimizing fleet operations and reducing carbon emissions can be identified. The records are continuously updated in real time on the blockchain layer, providing an immutable audit trail for accurate and transparent ESG reporting, which serves as a basis for financial institutions to assess the fleet owner's eligibility for sustainable finance. Additionally, any carbon reductions achieved by the fleet owner can also be qualified by third-party certification bodies and converted into carbon credits, which can be tokenized, managed, and traded on the blockchain platform to support other corporates in their journey towards decarbonization. So with this understanding of our platform, let us now walk through an example involving a medium delivery truck fleet owner named Brightown Logistics. In this use case, Debbie, Shivam, and I will be taking you through a series of demos providing a holistic perspective of the user journey of this company as it relates to its effort in reducing its carbon emissions, in performing impact reporting, as well as in seeking outcomes like sustainable financing, sustainable investments, and sustainable insurance from financial institutions. Debbie will first start off by showing you some of the IoT devices that we use, illustrating its compactness and ease of installation, and then going over some of the trip data that are collected and displayed on a fleet management system. Thereafter, the trip data is then piped to the data analytics layer for processing, and Shivam will be going through some of the computations that can be performed in this layer, such as the impact reports that are generated for vehicle assets on a trip level, the emissions baseline of the company that is profiled against industry standards, and the carbon reductions that are achieved and quantified in the form of carbon avoidance certificates. Finally, after the carbon avoidance certificates are converted into carbon credits by third-party auditors or consultants, I will then come in to show how these carbon credits can be tokenized and managed on the blockchain layer. I will also be showing how important ESG information can be stored in a blockchain-based registry to provide a bird's eye view for financial institutions to perform continuous monitoring of Brightown Logistics' green commitments. Sounds good? Okay, so let me now pass the time over to Debbie to go through the IoT data acquisition piece.
Henry, thank you so much for the lovely introduction to CO2 Connect. So I'm going to be taking you guys through the data acquisition portion, which is really focused on the IoT segment. And I just want to talk a little bit more about the use case of Brighttown Logistics. So you can think of Brighttown Logistics as a company that is servicing a global MNC. And this MNC is involved in manufacturing activities. So this global MNC will require to declare its Scope 3 emissions, which is basically the indirect emissions that is being produced throughout its operations. And a company like Brighttown Logistics will be a portion of this very difficult to calculate piece of Scope 3 emissions. Now, Brighttown Logistics will be under pressure to basically prove to their customer that they have sustainable strategies in place, that they are taking actions to basically reduce the carbon emissions in the operation. And they may also be required to get green certifications in order to participate in certain projects or deals pertaining to this particular customer. Now, Brighttown Logistics in itself may also have interest in exploring green financial services, which is really up and coming these days. And this is where CO2 Connect really adds value and comes in to deliver a very clean, automated, certified way in order to do this carbon calculation for companies like Brighttown Logistics, which traditionally would have a lot of trouble because it is a very expensive process to go hire third-party consultants to now do a snapshot of your carbon emissions. It's also a very very time-heavy procedure that one has to undertake as well. So where we really come in is that we provide the technology services that help to automate, help to calculate, and help to certify these carbon emissions on behalf of customers like Brighttown Logistics. And that generally begins in the physical realm of the actual vehicle, the actual asset itself. And this is where IoT plays a very central role. So in my hands, you see some devices, right? And companies that are involved in fleet and logistics may be quite familiar with such devices. So this device essentially is a GPS tracker that sits within the prime mover that captures all of the fleet-related data, such as the location, the way that the vehicle is driving, and the historical data regarding this specific vehicle as well. And when coupled with more advanced sensors, such as a CAN bus adapter that can also be put into a prime mover or a vehicle asset, we can even connect directly into the computer of this vehicle to understand now the mileage from the odometer itself, the fuel from the actual fuel sensor in the vehicle, and to even understand now the braking behavior, the acceleration behavior directly from the vehicle for very high accuracy. And with all of this data, it basically goes into what we call a fleet management system, which is where our data acquisition layer begins. So allow me to share my screen to give you a view in terms of the fleet management system that many fleet managers and logistics companies, supply chain companies are familiar with seeing. And you can see that a platform like this can be very rich in terms of operational planning. Where are my vehicles? What is the route that they have traveled previously? What delivery locations that they've gone to, which are speeding? All of this information traditionally have been used by our customers for operations and efficiency planning. But little do they know that they're sitting on a gold mine of data that can actually be used for carbon computation. So we've taken all of this IoT data and augmented it further in order to now generate very interesting reports that can be used for carbon computation. And while right now you see that this is Ascent's iSpot FMS, the basic tenets within CO2 Connect is that we want to be fully interoperable. So today it could be Ascent's iSpot FMS, but tomorrow we really want to be able to onboard and grow the entire ecosystem of sustainability and onboard other fleet management systems and companies to provide data into CO2 Connect. Now, this data, I will go through this briefly in terms of the richness of the data and share with you why we are so interested about this data as well. So you can see now on the left-hand side, there's a couple of tabs that are of interest for us. So To begin with, we look at the vehicle profile. So if you ever have gone to purchase a vehicle, there will be a vehicle specification in terms of the number of liters, the capacity, how it basically consumes fuel, and the efficiency of the fuel as well. And this is basically on paper. The performance in actual fact would actually differ depending on the way that the vehicle is driving or being driven, the driver behavior, and the type of trips that it's undertaking. So this is where trip information, where this driver or this vehicle has traveled from point to point in its daily operations, the information in terms of the average speed that it's traveling, the mileage that it has been accumulated for every single trip, and also the fuel consumed by per trip, together with the very important metric of which driver is actually driving the vehicle. This is all very, very important information when we come to the carbon computation, especially for fleet and logistics. Engine hours is another piece of data that is very rich. This we can actually use to understand what is productive work versus unproductive work. So say, for example, if a driver is now sitting in a queue and waiting in order to be served, they would have the engine on, the aircon on, and essentially the idling without being in motion. Or say, for example, they have stopped by the side somewhere and they're just taking a rest with the aircon on and the engine on as well. This is all unnecessary carbon emissions that are being produced. Plus, it also impacts the financials of the company because this is fuel cost, additional fuel costs that can also be very, very expensive. Data such as speeding, eco-driving, in terms of how this vehicle is being driven is very important when we talk about reduction. So understanding when a harsh braking event is happening, the cornering events are happening, harsh acceleration is happening, these all factor in when we talk about CO2 Connect's ability to understand these metrics and utilize them for carbon reduction strategies. When you look at the fuel table as well, this is very important data in terms of how the fuel is being consumed, at what speed, and the consumption patterns that we are able to see. So when we talk about a fleet management system, really a lot of people think about, operational data. But when we take this as a whole and we now pump this through our CO2 Connect proprietary data cleansing engine at the first level, we can now make sure that the accuracy and the data specification of multiple fleet managements can be aligned so that it is ready to be consumed by the core CO2 Connect AI engine for carbon computation, which has inbuilt metrics and libraries that are that conform to international standards. And this is where I will hand over to my colleague Shivam, and Shivam will be able to take you through the CO2 Connect dashboard and what you can expect to see there. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, for the detailed introduction and the coverage on the data acquisition process using the hardware and the preliminary data sieving done by the iSpot FMS engine. Now, let me take this opportunity to really introduce our brand new carbon abatement platform, CO2 Connect, and I will share my screen. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Great. So using the use case of Brighttown Logistics, and how Brighttown Logistics would use this powerful platform is that they would be able to track their carbon emissions at driver level, trip level, vehicular level, and finally at a company level. As mentioned, critical data such as fuel consumption, total mileage, together with other parameters, would be used to feed our rigorous carbon computation engine. As a result, this engine would output the carbon emissions of each driver that is associated with the trip he or she has taken. Now, a significant issue on hand is that the operation heads currently don't have any visibility on how poorly their vehicles in their fleets are performing. This means they are unable to quantify the green efficiency of these vehicles. With the driving behavior tracking function, they would be able to monitor where exactly the unnecessary carbon emissions are generated. For example, Albert's trip to Tampines Mall reflects a high carbon emission status, which could be due to reasons such as engine idling, harsh braking, and even speeding. These behavioral changes, if regulated by companies, would make a significant impact on the carbon emissions. However, the first step to take would be to realize and understand the underlying sources of these emissions using our CO2 Connect platform. Now, this brings me to my next point. Current fleet drivers have no way to realize that they are not driving in a carbon efficient and green manner. Over a few trips, drivers would be able to see on our platform whether they are driving efficiently, and if not, what are the changes they should make for the vehicle to be performing in a more carbon efficient manner. Not only that, but these drivers also have no incentive to drive more efficiently in a more green manner. So to recognize individual drivers' consistency in good driving behavior, the system would automatically generate a driver's carbon avoidance certificate. This certificate would reflect a summary of the number of trips made by him, the mileage covered across those trips, and finally, but most importantly, the carbon emissions he has avoided. As shown here, it is 0.38 tons per kilometer of carbon avoided. This certificate for each driver would be verified by accredited global consultancies and institutions that do carbon computation using global ISO standards and greenhouse gas protocols. Next, I'm excited to share the most interesting feature of this platform: the company's baseline carbon emissions, the carbon reductions till date for the current year, and of course, their net zero percentage. As you can see here, companies are not aiming to achieve a 100% net zero target overnight, because that is not a realistic target. This platform will help them to track their progress in achieving net zero over a long period of time and show them where they are currently as part of their sustainability goals. This page shows us that Brighttown Logistics are targeting to be at least 20% close to being net zero by the end of 2021. And currently, they are at 15%, which is rather remarkable. The baseline emissions is computed by an advanced regression model using the fleet data mentioned by Debbie earlier on. This page shows all 20 vehicles in Brighttown's fleet are petrol-based, which explains the majority contribution of their overall carbon emissions. Fortunately, they are making a conscious and active effort to reduce their carbon emissions by purchasing carbon offsets and also phasing out their older vehicles. They are also consciously trying to buy renewable energy certificates, or RECs. Also, if companies want to convert their vehicles or internal combustion engine vehicles into electric vehicles, they are able to track electricity usage through this platform. From the perspective of Brighttown Logistics management team, they can track their overall operation-based carbon reduction, be it behavioral improvement or asset maintenance. Additionally, they can also enumerate the carbon emission reduced by converting part of their fleet from diesel to fully electric. Finally, companies would be able to automatically generate their carbon avoidance certificate via this platform. This certificate would be a summary of their official company registration number and their year-on-year fuel reduction. For instance, Brighttown Logistics have reduced their petrol and diesel consumption, which is reflected on this cert, and it translates to a net carbon reduction of 25.8 tons. Like the driver's carbon avoidance cert, this would also be accredited and verified by globally recognized institutions and consultancies. To put it into context, for financial institutions, green loans and green bonds, they would need to go through the hassle of engaging a third party to do all these auditing and validation, which can be an arduous and time-consuming process. This is where we, CO2 Connect, can step in to bridge the gap by auto-generating high-quality, approved, and verified carbon avoidance certificates which can be fed to our blockchain vault and used by these financial institutions. Similarly, fleet owners, SME owners, government agencies, regulators, facility managers, and a variety of different categories of companies are also excited to implement this platform to begin monitoring and substantiating the carbon emissions their company is baselined at, and the contribution they are making by quantifying the carbon reduction progress they have made, all via our CO2 Connect platform. The unveiling of the CO2 Connect platform, and I really look forward to walk this journey towards sustainability with all of you. I will now hand my time back over to Henry, who will touch more on the blockchain layer and the carbon credit tokenization process.
Okay, thank you, Shivam. I will now bring you through the final piece of our platform, which is the blockchain layer. And at this point, after the carbon avoidance certificates are generated, this is where the platform becomes really powerful, because auditors and consultants can now come in to attest the ESG data records and qualify the carbon avoidance certificates that are generated as actual emission reductions that have taken place and convert them into carbon credits. Since oversight of these two layers is necessary to unlock sustainable financing from financial institutions, that is where the blockchain layer becomes important as well. Firstly, for impact reporting, leveraging of the key attributes of blockchain technology like immutability and traceability to provide transparent reporting where every transaction is associated with a timestamp and a transaction ID that can be easily verified on a blockchain browser. So there's accountability there. Now, secondly, it is also important for carbon credit lifecycle management, which is now digitally native on the blockchain. So every batch of tokens that are minted on the platform is unique, substantiated with data, and have built-in features to monitor the transfer of ownership. And this will help to prevent long-standing issues in the carbon market like double spending and duplication. And since we are also looking to integrate with carbon exchanges as well, this capability now helps to supplement high-quality carbon credits to the market, thereby providing liquidity and price transparency, as well as to go green. For corporates that have taken active steps to decarbonize, these carbon credits may even be seen as a form of digital asset that can be monetized as an additional source of revenue. So there are multiple benefits here. And let me now move on to the next demo, continuing from where Shivam left off. For this demo, I'll be manually inputting project data on an application dashboard that we have built at the backend of CO2 Connect platform. Although please note that in an actual use case, certified and attested data would flow seamlessly to the platform through the use of APIs. Just give me a minute while I open my application. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So for this demo walkthrough, I'll be covering two modules that we have built for CO2 Connect. The first is an ESG data vault, and the second is a carbon market module. Now for the ESG data vault, this is important for corporates to submit or upload their ESG information, such as impact reports, ESG disclosures, monitoring reports, etc., so that it is blockchain on the platform and this to monitor their ongoing green commitments as well as to assess their eligibility for sustainable finance. So over here, you can see a dashboard providing a listing of the different green projects that are undertaken by corporates from different industry sectors. Now, clicking onto this create button here will bring us to this page where a corporate can then specify the parameters for their green project. So over here, you can key in the project type, which you can select from a list of different industry sectors. For Brightown Logistics, since they originated from the transport and logistics sector, I'm going to select this. Now, project name, you can key in a name for the green project that I'm embarking on. So for us, it will be CO2 Connect Pilot Program and a project code that's associated with this name. The submitter ID will be the wallet address for Brightown Logistics, since after the creation of this smart contract on the platform, it'll be tagged to this company. Now, earlier, I've pre-populated this platform, so I will not be filling in this data and submitting on the platform. Otherwise, there'll be a duplicate entry. But let me just go back to the earlier dashboard and click into this entry that you see over here, right? So over here, you can see there are 4 entries or 4 data uploads that have been performed by Brightown Logistics ever since they start embarking on the CO2 Connect pilot program. The first entry over here specifies the starting entries like their ICRA number for their registered business entity, the emission baseline that we have computed for them, which it's 168 tons, if you recall from the dashboard that Shivam shared earlier, as well as the carbon reduction target that they are aiming to achieve for this pilot program. Which is about 20% and translates to 33.7 tons. Now, subsequently, they can then use this platform to submit ongoing data feeds to update on their progress in their green activities. So the latter 3 entries over here are actually the cumulative reductions that they have managed to achieve over the span of, say, the past month or so, right? And the latest entry over here actually provides an update on the cumulative petrol reduction. Over here, we note that they achieved 25.8 tons of CO2 emission reduction, which translates to about 15% of their original target, 20%. So they are actually making good progress over here. And financial institutions can now use the APIs that we have built for this module to retrieve the records, to monitor their progress, and to determine whether they are suitable for different kinds of sustainable financing activities. Right, so that is for the first module that I'm showcasing over here. Now, the next module is the carbon market module. Over here, you see that the setting projects that have been undertaken by companies from different industry sectors, right? So for Brightown Logistics, if you recall from Shivam's dashboard again, since they have managed to achieve 25 tons of carbon reduction and qualified in the form of carbon avoidance certificates, at the point where third-party certification bodies like auditors or consultants coming in to certify that the carbon reduction is actually achieved and can be converted into carbon credits, this is where they can actually tokenize them into carbon credits and manage them on the blockchain platform. This is done by clicking on this create button over here, whereby important project metadata can be specified, the project description, etc. So for this use case for Brightown Logistics, I'm just going to quickly key in some information to illustrate how the process is actually transacted on the blockchain. So for the submitter ID, this would be the certification body after attesting the records and qualifying that those carbon avoidance certificates can be converted into carbon credits. The assigned company would be the wallet address of Brightown Logistics, which is this string over here. The project name, I'm just going to come up with an abbreviation, say Brightown Logistics CO2 pilot program, right? Okay. And then for the sector, since they come from the transport and logistics sector, I'm just going to select this over here. And for the project description, so over here, I specify other information like the location where they're embarking on this decarbonization program. 20 as a starting point, the emissions reduction target of 33.7 tons, which is 20% of their baseline emissions, as well as the industry standards which they are compliant with, ISO and GRI. Okay, so I'm going to submit this on the platform. Okay, so once the smart contract is successfully deployed on the blockchain platform, which you can see in this latest entry over here, you can actually click into it to see all the project metadata that has been tagged or tied to this smart contract. Now from here, we can then proceed to create different batches of carbon credits that are originating from this project using this issuance function here. Okay, so clicking into it, you can see all the further details that can be specified, including the batch name, the batch code, the batch quantity. Carbon credits have an expiry period, and also who to allocate it to, the carbon asset owner. In this case, it will be Brightown Logistics. Right. So for here, I'm just going to quickly key in some information as well. So this is for the 2021 to say 2022 pilot phase. I'm just going to put in some numbers at the end to make this unique. And then the batch code, same thing over here. Okay. The batch quantity. Now for this, I'm going to select 25 because one carbon credit is actually equivalent to 1 metric ton of CO2 emissions reductions that have taken place. And you might think that note that this is just a demo, and this is illustrating an example of a company that just started on its green program. to decarbonize their operations. So for the pilot program, if this is the amount that they are targeting to reduce, we will just key in accordingly. But we do note that subsequently, as they step up their efforts to go green and increase their emission reduction target, we expect to generate a lot more carbon credits in the future. Okay, so for the validity period, I'm just going to keep
Henry?
this.
Sorry to come in here. We can't see your screen. Do you mind resharing?
Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Did it just drop off recently, or did you guys see all the earlier records that I've keyed in?
I think you can proceed.
Okay, right. So over here, I've specified some details for this batch of carbon credits that have been that will be minted for this carbon offsetting program, and I'm just going to allocate it to Brightown Logistics, which is identified by this wallet address over here. Also the quantity 25, submitted onto the blockchain. Okay, so on successful tokenization of the carbon credits, you can see that all the project metadata will also be tagged and tied to the carbon credits. And then we can actually click into here to view more details. By clicking into the transaction ID, you can verify the records on the blockchain browser. So just give it a minute for it to load. Okay, so over here you can see the transaction details, the block number, the status of the transaction, the timestamp, as well as the input. Up one layer to click into the contract address. So this is a smart contract that we have deployed to represent the carbon offsetting project that this company is embarking on. You can see the trail of activities that have happened ever since its creation. So this actually provides an immutable audit trail for traceability and transparency, and financial institutions can verify the records accordingly. Now, at this point, after the carbon credits are tokenized, corporates can now proceed to perform carbon credit trading on integrated carbon exchanges, where the use of blockchain technology here can help to prevent issues like duplication and double spending. So to illustrate a simple transaction, let me just go back to the application dashboard over here to showcase to you a feature that we are currently building out as a settlement utility after carbon credits have been successfully sold to a counterparty, right? So if I were to go into this account balance, and if I were to filter by Brightown Logistics wallet address, you can see that the latest entry over here, which I just created, 25 credits that have been allocated into that wallet address. So say, for example, there is another logistics company called Fast Trucks Logistics that decided to buy 10 credits from Brightown Logistics to offset their carbon emissions. On the successful sale of the credits, Brightown Logistics can then initiate this transfer function where they can key in the destination address of Fast Trucks Logistics, which is identified by this string over here, and to transfer 10 credits over to the company. Okay. So after the transfer is successful, you can see that the balance is updated. Okay, just give it a minute for it to load. Over here, from 25, you drop down to 15. And if you were to click onto the withdrawal tab over here, you can also monitor the transaction where 10 credits have been transferred from Brightown Logistics to Fast Truck Logistics. Both of them are identified by their respective wallet addresses. And also you can click onto details to view the details on the blockchain browser. Right? So that actually concludes the demo segment that we have prepared for you. Let me now switch back to the presentation deck to complete the presentation. Okay. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, let me just maximize this. Right, so to recap, right, earlier you have seen a series of demos that Debbie, Shivam, and I have performed. So let me just go through what we have done in order to put everything into context. Now, in Debbie's presentation segment, you have seen an example of the different IoT devices that we use, the CAN bus adapter, the GPS devices, and so forth, as well as the different information that we track on a vehicle level that is then displayed on the fleet management system dashboard. Right after the raw data has been captured, it is then sent to the data analytics layer, which is processed using our CO2 Connect engine. And Shivam has shared the dashboard of how we can actually compute the emissions baseline of a company right down to the trip level, the impact reporting on a trip-by-trip basis, according to the different vehicle assets, as well as the generation of carbon avoidance certificates. And lastly, I've come in to also showcase to you how all this information can then be uploaded onto a blockchain-based registry that allows a company or corporate to perform ESG data reporting and allow financial institutions to access reliable company-specific ESG information for them to monitor the green commitments of the corporates that they are in charge of, right? So to sum up, our value proposition is not based solely on our technology offering. It is also about the holistic ecosystem that we are trying to build for different stakeholders to participate in and also be the ultimate beneficiaries. So with this platform, we are actually aiming to help financial institutions to achieve these different things, such as continuous transparency and traceability on the greenness of their investments, thereby preventing greenwashing, to engage in more well-informed and inclusive ESG financing and investment decisions, as well as to explore new business opportunities. On the corporate's end, it actually allows them to access better sustainable financing services with the industry that are compliant with different industry standards, as well as enhances their competitive edge and cost savings with more accurate data-driven green strategies. Right? We are now piloting this program for corporates to gain early access to our platform. So please visit us at co2connect.com to learn more about the details and see how we can work together on your company's sustainability agenda. I'll be pasting the company website in the chat box for your easy reference later. Okay, so with that, I think we have come to the end of our platform showcase. I hope today's session has been informative and insightful, and I would just like to end here and open up the session to the floor for any questions you might have for our speakers. Thank you.
Henry, I think we have one question in the conversation box. Would you like to address that? Oh, I think it's been retracted.
Oh, I think there's a question that I see on the chat box. Can you elaborate on greenwashing and how your company can help detect or deter greenwashing? Yeah. Debbie or Shivam, would you like to take this?
Shivam, I think maybe you can share a little bit more in terms of the computation.
Sorry, I'm not seeing the question.
It's in the chats. The chats tab.
Oh, okay.
There's another one in the Q&A as well. Okay, Shivam, can you see it?
Yeah. So currently, a lot of times corporates are unable to identify exactly whether whenever they issue a green bond, they need to check whether their money is really going to be used in improving their carbon emissions or not. So how we are able to validate this is using these IoT devices that we install. We get actual information. We don't rely on the specifications of the vehicles or fuel efficiency that the maker has claimed to be. So by extracting real-time data in the how their fuel is being consumed on the roads actually, so we can use this information to really validate whether the carbon reduction is really there or not. So I hope that answers your question on whether the corporates are able to believe the SMEs or whoever that claim to be reducing their carbon emissions. It's not just on paper. Oh, we have bought these electric vehicles, that's why our carbon emissions are lesser. But in fact, we have actual data to support that fact that electric vehicles indeed are reducing their carbon emissions.
So I think I would like to add on to that as well. I think another basic tenet of the CO2 Connect platform and the way that we process the data, a lot of this data also goes through a lot further cleansing and further processing to make sure that the metrics are within range. So we actually do quite a lot of data validation and verification first to make sure that any data that is collected in the physical world still meets, the realms of science as well. And then once it goes into the platform layer, a very important aspect of the entire platform and the way that we handle it is also the ESG vault, which is blockchain secured. So a lot of the information that we are generating, down to the data reports, down to the carbon avoidance certificates, this is actually stored within the ESG data vault, which is sitting on a blockchain infrastructure. So say, for example, you wanted to now dig deeper in terms of the start of this carbon avoidance certificate, or you wanted to review all of the data parameters, or you wanted to go dig a little bit deeper, this can all be tied back within a blockchain framework.
Yeah, I hope, Trev, that answers your question on greenwashing and the ability to detect greenwashing.
All right, there's another question as well from Annie. So what is the purpose for transferring the CO2 credit? Okay, so I think the purpose for transferring the CO2 credit is the entire CO2 platform also connects into open carbon exchanges. So what Henry had actually showcased was the ability of CO2 Connect to work with third-party verification companies that basically verify that a carbon avoidance certificate is fit to be traded within a carbon marketplace. So once this has been performed, you essentially are able to now put your carbon avoidance certificates, which then can be traded further within the marketplaces. So the purpose really is to help other companies to offset their carbon through your own carbon, reduction strategies that then generate something that you can monetize and something that you can trade to basically finance your own journey as well. So yeah, Annie, I hope that answers your question. Okay, we have one more question from George. And George is asking, do you own the blockchain which stores this information? Would this be considered a centralized blockchain? So yes, it is our own blockchain, and the infrastructure is using distributed consensus mechanism to validate transactions on the network. All right, so Henry's just rejoining the session. Henry, do you have anything else to add in terms of the question posed by George?
Sorry, I think my internet is pretty unstable, so I didn't really catch.
So Henry, I had already provided the
Right.
answer in terms of
Yes.
us using the distributed consensus mechanism. Is there anything else that you'd like to add
Yes.
to address?
Right. So for our blockchain infrastructure, it's actually Ethereum based. And the reason why we selected Ethereum is because in terms of the enterprise blockchains out there, Ethereum currently has the greatest ecosystem in terms of a global development of developers that are working on enhancing its features and making sure that the protocol is established, as well as ensuring that it's compatible with the broader blockchain blockchain industry, but we do recognize that there are certain limitations of the Ethereum protocol. So this is where we have come in to build additional enhancements to optimize it for complex layer processing. So when it comes to whether we own the blockchain, yes, it actually belongs to us. It is our blockchain infrastructure, although it is Ethereum based, and we have additional enhancements that have been built in. In terms of the validation of transaction on the blockchain, it's actually done through distributed consensus mechanisms involving a blend of Raft and PBFT. I don't think I have to go into the technical details over here, but or having a centralized party that might potentially, alter some of the records on the system, right?
Okay, so I think that's all the questions. Are there any other questions that the audience would like to ask? Shivam, would you like to address Ethan's question? So does the system include scorecard for individual truck driver? In the Q&A tab, yeah.
Yes, it does include a scorecard, and it summarizes the critical information for the driver and what type of behavioral changes he has made. So in this beta system, the scorecard isn't included yet, but we are in the process of building the scorecard and finalizing the details of the scorecard. So yes, this system will be including a scorecard for the drivers, as well as the vehicles. Yes.
So I just want to augment this further. So the ability to also have the scorecard will be down to the type of data that is being processed or being collected from the IoT and the fleet management systems. So the fleet management system that I have shown you already has the ability, and the devices that we are deploying have already got the base capability in order to calculate this and be able to do the metrics. So if, say, for example, you want to use a third-party fleet management system or third-party devices outside of the already integrated or onboarded systems, we would need to do a data validation to see if we're able to do the accurate calculation of certain driver behavior, which relates to basically the scorecard for the truck drivers. All right, I think that Ethan has asked another question. Are we able to include control measures or alerts? So I think within the CO2 Connect platform, it is very specific for the carbon computation. So we will be able to provide the necessary notifications or recommendations as well within the CO2 Connect platform related to the carbon emissions. However, if you're asking from a more operational fleet management framework, this is sitting within the fleet management system, which then is used for operational decision making regarding the efficiency of your fleet and planning your fleet essentially. So the answer for both is that we would be providing certain notifications and alerts depending on the purpose, right? So if the measure of the alerts and the notifications are in relation to the operations, this would be relegated to probably the fleet management layer, right? So we already do have this capability within the core fleet management, and the other type of parameters would be able to be settled within the CO2 Connect platform in relation to the carbon emissions, produced together with the reductions as well. Okay, so we have one more question from K1. So you are from 3 companies. How would you be engaging with potential customers? How are the responsibilities divided between the 3 of you? So I think this is a very good question. So CO2 Connect is a young company. We're very, very ambitious, and there's a lot of core capabilities between 3 companies, as you've rightly mentioned. And we basically have come together as CO2 Pte Ltd. So it is a registered entity that we are now building up. So our go-to-market strategy is to basically be presented as one unified whole as CO2. All right. Wonderful. So Henry, I think we have another 5 minutes. So are there any more questions? Let's see.
Maybe you can take 1 or 2 more before we end the session.
Sure.
Yeah. No more questions?
I think we are done. I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah. Okay, if that's all the questions that we have, I think we can end this session. Anyway, thank you everyone for your time that you have spent with us today. Again, we hope that today's session has been informative and insightful for you. And please visit us at co2connect.com to learn more about our company and the work that we do. Right. So we actually have a series of different showcases and webinars that are lined up for you this week. So please stay tuned for all the other webinars that will be conducted by the rest of my colleagues. Right. Thank you. Have a good rest of the week. Right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Shivam and Debbie.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.